Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and the vast majority of you who watch my videos live in the United States, so I feel like we kind of have somewhat of a shared experience, especially when it comes down to some of the more domestic events that have been happening, and of course, you know, the things like in Afghanistan, which is a subject that I've been kind of debating making a whole separate video on. The only issue is with that is I feel like number one, the video would be like 45 minutes long. It would be way longer than the average video that I ever put out on my channel. It would be a pretty massive turn in direction, you know, it wouldn't be very playful, I'd be very serious. And then on top of that, I feel like, you know, with something like that, it almost seems as if people would spend too long, you know, having political debates about which party is better or which president was better instead of actually like caring about the points of the video. So I really don't want to make a massive video like that in vain, but obviously a lot of pretty crazy things have been happening in the last few weeks for the United States. I mean, a lot of very unfortunate things also have been happening for the United States, and it's all kind of coming back on Joe Biden, the current president of the country. It seems like Americans are growing more and more frustrated with the president and his administration. The country seems to think that he's failing when it comes to multiple aspects of running the country, and he has failed his handling of multiple crises, okay? So right now there's a couple of major, I guess, moments that are really unfolding that are damaging the Biden presidency and the public's, I guess, confidence and trust in the president's administration. First off, there's a lot of economic concerns. Obviously, gas prices have been going up a lot recently. I think the recent estimate that I saw locally was that here in a few weeks, gas might be like $3.20 a gallon, which is a pretty stark change because, you know, during like the Trump presidency, gas was like $1.80 at points, right? You know, the gas price was the best that it had been in years. You know, it was definitely a pretty good look for the Trump presidency to keep fuel costs low like that, and they have kind of sprung back up. Not entirely, I guess, the fault of the Biden administration, but they haven't necessarily done anything to help the problem, and it's kind of made a lot of Americans frustrated. Obviously, there's also been a massive explosion in inflation, which has actually been kind of going on and was kind of predictable from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic anyway. I mean, when the Federal Reserve is literally just printing money to prop the entire economy up, it was very much so known that this was going to be something we had to take a look at, unfortunately. But another one is COVID, and the big one is Afghanistan. Now, I'm going to save Afghanistan for last, so you guys can stick around and hear about that. There's been a lot of unfortunate developments in this whole situation, but COVID, unfortunately, has been making a pretty massive resurgence. The Delta variant has been dominating the headlines and also has been responsible for massive spikes in COVID-19 cases and deaths throughout the United States. And the public is getting extremely tired of the Biden administration's handling of these multiple crises. Obviously, there's some things you can do, some things you can't do, and it feels like a lot of people are growing frustrated because they think that the administration is not handling them with the urgency that they should be handled. I mean, COVID-19, you know, the whole population was getting vaccinated and everything, and the cases were down to this low number again. So it's definitely frustrating to kind of see everything make a comeback, right? To see the possibility of these mask mandates and these, you know, lockdowns and things like that possibly coming back. And unfortunately, COVID has become a politicized issue to begin with, but the real kicker, unfortunately, in a lot of this has been the handling of the fall of Afghanistan and the evacuation of U.S. troops and U.S. loyalists out of Afghanistan after the Taliban has basically completely retaken the country. So if you didn't know, in the early 2000s, the United States invaded Afghanistan to fight terrorism, quote unquote, and to also help take down the Taliban-led government in place in Afghanistan. That was successfully done, and for about 20 years, the United States spent trillions of dollars, thousands of American soldiers' lives, and watched this whole thing basically occur through two major economic recessions. And within weeks of the US's announced withdrawal, the Taliban fully retook the country over. The Afghan army literally fled from them. The president flew out of Afghanistan with cash in hand, and the government is now completely controlled basically by the Taliban. So the Taliban are known for being very cutthroat, brutal terrorists. In fact, they recently murdered a TikTok comedian for telling jokes by executing him by fire squad, and then also, I believe, slitting his throat. Women are massively oppressed in the Taliban-led society. Journalists are harassed and beaten in the streets. People sympathetic to the U.S., or unfortunately even Afghan civilians who helped the United States, are being hunted door to door and executed for their participation, even though the Taliban said that they were not going to take out vengeance against US loyalists. And obviously, just recently, a terrorist attack, not committed by the Taliban, but by a group called ISIS-K, which is some sort of branch, I guess, of the Islamic State, killed well over a dozen US servicemen, mostly Marines, from my understanding, in Kabul near the airport. We've seen Afghan citizens literally clinging to the sides of US airplanes trying to fly people out, to the point that they were not only mashed up in the landing gear, but also to the point that they would literally fall to their deaths. These people are so afraid of the Taliban, they're so scared of what's to come, that they would literally rather fall off the side of a fucking airplane and die than to face the Taliban. And unfortunately, you know, this is a situation that was somewhat predictable. I mean, obviously, there was going to be a lot of problems when the US pulled out of Afghanistan in the first place, but the quickness and the shocking scenes, I guess, that we've seen unfold are really inexcusable. I mean, the US, honestly, just put too much into Afghanistan to get the results that we got. The American people are pissed, rightfully so, and Biden's really holding a lot of the blame. Now, Biden has spent the vast majority of his time so far facing this crisis, shifting blame to the Trump administration for the deal that they actually ended up fostering with the Taliban last year, dodging a lot of questions about it, and basically watching as the fucking evacuation efforts have largely failed. Sure, the US has evacuated, I believe, over 100,000 Afghans and US citizens out of Afghanistan, but at the same time, a lot of the shit that's happened is absolutely inexcusable. I mean, there's been reports of American citizens throwing their passports at the fences of the airport to try and get their way in so that they can leave this country, which, by the way, is going to fucking kill them if they find them, and they're not being let in, okay? There's a lot of issues with the pullout so far, and the vast majority of Americans polled seem to believe that pulling out of Afghanistan was the correct move, myself included. It was a waste of time, money, and effort, obviously, but at the same time, there was a much better way to go about this, and the vast majority of Americans also believe that Biden administration's handling of this situation has been pretty piss poor. Recent polls have shown that Biden's average approval rating has fallen to about 47% and is continuing to plummet into the ground due to a multitude of different issues, but a lot of it revolving around the resurgence of COVID-19 and, of course, the Afghan crisis. At the start of May, it was around 54%, and Biden's administration was looked upon very favorably, actually, by a lot of Americans. Of course, you know, his approval with Republicans has already been, you know, pretty low. They have definitely not been very hyped for the Biden administration. In fact, a lot of people still believe that President Trump is actually to be reinstated or is going to somehow make his way back into office. But, you know, right now we're dealing with the Biden administration. We're seeing what, you know, Joseph is going to do, I guess, right? And in reality, it's kind of fucking ridiculous how bad that things are getting. So obviously a lot of Americans are extremely pissed that, you know, these servicemen and women, I don't know if there were any women killed, but, you know, these people serving the US military were killed in this terrorist attack yesterday. But it's okay because the handling of this whole thing is getting a lot better. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but this is a pretty cool sounding feature, I guess, of this Biden administration's pullout here. US officials have been exposed for providing the Taliban, a terrorist group that we've been fighting for decades, that is openly executing anyone who has ties with the Americans by going door to door. It's okay, the US officials have been providing the Taliban with the fucking names of American citizens and Afghanistan allies who helped us during the conflict, quote unquote, to help ease the evacuation efforts. Let me go ahead and explain this to you if you're not understanding what I'm saying. American citizens, people who hold green cards, you know, translators who are Afghani, who are trying to flee the Taliban that will fucking execute them for their participation, have had a list of their names given to the Taliban in Kabul by US officials. Supposedly, this is supposed to help the Taliban allow entry into the perimeter of the city airport, which is where the US is leading the evacuation efforts. But obviously, I don't think I should have to explain to you the dangers of giving this fucking list of information out, basically doxing people who are at risk of being fucking killed by this terrorist group. I don't think I should have to explain to you, really, the fucking dangers that provides. So basically, you know, imagine you're a US citizen, right? You're on a bus, and the Taliban stops you at a checkpoint. If your name's on that list, do you really think the Taliban gives a fuck if the United States says, hey now, don't kill those people, you be nice now? You think the Taliban's giving a shit? You know, only thousands of US soldiers have been killed in Afghanistan over the last 2 decades to begin with that led to this whole shit show even happening. You know, only a dozen or so US servicemen and women were fucking brutally murdered by ISIS yesterday in bombings. And let's get this straight here too, you know, because people are trying to defend this by saying, oh, it wasn't the Taliban who did it, so, you know, they're not a threat. You realize ISIS and Taliban have basically the same fucking ideologies, right? They're both terrorist organizations. They both oppress people. They both kill people. They both view the United States as a fucking enemy. Do you really think the Taliban doesn't view the United States as an enemy after we displaced their government 2 decades ago and have spent the last 2 decades killing their leaders and their soldiers and occupying this country and shit? Do you really fucking believe that? Like, come on now. It shouldn't take this much brain power to make these connections. This is the dumbest shit I've ever seen, and it's so fucking tragic because God knows if or how many people will die as a result of this. But it's okay, you know, because back here at home, President Biden at first was actually on vacation when the entire crisis started to unfold and wasn't taking media questions. So that was pretty cool, you know, vacationing while there's a massive global crisis going on. That's pretty fucking cool. But it's all right also because Biden actually yesterday had this moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, they gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys understand what's going on here. The most powerful, or one of the most powerful men on the entire planet has just come in front of the press to say, hey, you know, there's somebody curating a fucking list for me to determine which political outlets that I speak to. As the President of the United States, I don't even get to select what members of the media that I fucking speak to. They give me a list. They tell me who I can talk to. This is the equivalent of being in 3rd grade and the teacher pairs you up for fucking partners and you get no say in it. And this man leads the most powerful quote-unquote country on the face of the planet. But yet someone's, you know, writing a list on who Biden is supposed to fucking talk to. That doesn't, you know, ring a bell or like cause issue with people? That in a democracy with free speech, the president is literally having curated lists of who he's gonna fucking speak to at press conferences? It's insane. Like, it's getting to a point of absolutely no fucking return, you know? US soldiers are being brutally murdered during this entire thing. You know, Americans are being doxxed by the fucking government to the Taliban. The president's approval ratings are dropping through the floor. You know, there's a lot of questions around the economy. COVID's making a resurgence. And people are getting fed up because at this point, they don't believe that this Biden administration is handling these things correctly. And honestly, I have to agree. There's a lot of shit that needs to change about how this whole thing is being handled. This administration, it honestly kind of seems like deer in the headlights. Like there's so many different fucking things going on at once, and yet, you know, none of it's being handled properly. So yes, the Biden administration is in jeopardy. There's people calling for outright resignation. There's outright, you know, impeachment processes that are being planned, I believe. They probably won't go anywhere in all reality. I don't really think Biden's gonna get impeached over all of this stuff, but at the same time, man, when the whole country is looking at the president and they have no faith in how he's handling any of the massive issues facing them, there's a problem there, okay? And if anything, what's at jeopardy here is Biden's legacy, okay? Because, you know, he's supposed to be the people's president. Everybody's supposed to be all riled up and hyped the fuck up because Biden's in office. You know, we got Trump out of office. And yet he's doing absolutely nothing to handle these situations. In fact, it's all being handled like complete horseshit. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say about Biden. I know that this is literally just inviting political warfare in the fucking comments, but that was going to happen anyway in all reality. So go ahead and let me know. What do you think about Biden's presidency? What do you think about how he's handling these situations? Do you want to see a standalone video in which I kind of cover the entirety of the Afghanistan situation? And with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, talking about the Biden administration and signing out.